I have a passion for finding affordable tools that nobody else talks about. And because of this, good or bad, I've been known to dabble into Harbor Freight, as there truly are some hidden gems in there that I don't think most people know about. So join me today as we take a deep dive into my Harbor Freight adventures. So just like Walmart, the first time I went to Harbor Freight, I felt like I had to take a shower afterwards. But if you really do spend some quality time in there, you'll find some quality tools at rock bottom prices. So join me today in this compilation video of all the unique items I've found at Harbor Freight. As somebody who has to drive by 4 Home Depots and Lowe's to get to a Harbor Freight, I don't do a whole lot of shopping there. So it takes a lot of hype to get me to visit. But that's exactly what's happening for today's video, as I just purchased 7 tools that are going viral on YouTube. So I thought I'd see what all the talk's about and see if any of these tools are dope or if they're all just a joke. So let's get into it and talk about my first item, which I got for my table saw. Hey cuz, I need to get a new table saw. Mine's been acting up on me. Any specific model you have in mind? Megan Fox, of course, but what's that got to do with a table saw? Never mind. Let's get into our first tool. So the tool in this box is the item that initiated this entire video. And that's because everybody seems to be talking about this affordable option for your table saw on YouTube. So I meandered all the way over to Harbor Freight, eagerly anticipating purchasing this tool, only to find out they were completely sold out, even though their website said they were available and in stock. So my first lesson learned with Harbor Freight is it may be worth a call, as it appears that their website doesn't talk to their store inventory. So I had to order this online and pay shipping, which is unfortunate, but let's tear into this box and see what we got. This is the Bauer 24 3/4 fence and miter gauge. Let's get it out of the box and check it out. So one of the main selling points for this miter gauge is the price. At today's prices, this thing costs $44.99, which is a heck of a lot cheaper than some of your higher end ones. Specifically, the one that I have is the Craig, and it comes in at $159 today. So let's see how this Bauer compares to the Craig and see what comes inside the box. My first impressions with this miter gauge are pretty positive, as it looks like most of the pieces are made of metal and it looks fairly easy to assemble. And you can see the major pieces to this miter gauge are the miter gauge itself, a fence, a stop block, as well as a handle. And the assembly is really pretty easy. The first step is to take the handle and a washer and place it right into the miter gauge. With the handle now in place, you'll now take 2 of the bolts and washers and place them right through the miter gauge and attach the smaller handles. With those 2 bolts in place, you can now take your fence and slide it onto those bolts through the T-track. Now you'll take your larger fence extension lock knob and bracket and slide it right into the back of that miter gauge fence. After that, we can install the stop block by sliding it into the top of the miter gauge fence. And the last step is to quickly add an end cap to each side of the fence. And that basically covers the entire assembly of this miter gauge. So let's take it over to the table saw and take a look at some of its features. So one of the first things that we'll do is we'll slide the miter gauge into the miter slot. Now if there's any slop with the miter gauge and the miter slot, you can tighten down that miter gauge by one of the 3 screws on the miter bar. And for my miter gauge, it just took a couple of turns with the included Allen key to get this thing rock solid in that miter slot. With the miter gauge in place, the first thing that I like to do is to set the fence about 1 inch away from the blade. With that fence distance set, you can now lock it into place with the 2 red knobs on the back of the miter gauge. Now one of the first things that you'll notice with this miter gauge is its stop block, and this looks very similar to my Craig. Now this fence doesn't have the ability to do any micro adjustments on it, but frankly neither does my Craig. Now let's take a look at how that adjustable fence works. If we extend that fence out, you'll see that there's 2 bars that connect the extension to the actual fence. The extension is locked into place with a bracket that simply pins the 2 bars into the T-track. And you can even transfer the stop block onto the extension for your wider cuts. If we extend that fence all the way out, you can see that we're getting just under 25 inches of capacity. Now one thing to consider is there is a little bit of play back and forth once that fence is fully extended. But honestly, when we compare it to the Craig at its full extension, it's really not that much different. The only thing that I really prefer with the Craig over the Bauer so far are the markings on the very top of the Craig. Lastly, when we pull that fence back, the collapsed fence is 14 3/4 of an inch long. Now let's take a look at the angles that are available with this gauge. If we look at the gauge, you can see it goes from 0 to 74 degrees in either direction. Now, even though it's labeled for 74 degrees in each direction, you can really only get about 70. And my guess is you're really not going to be cutting at that steep of an angle anyway. You probably noticed those little notches or detents alongside those angles. Let's talk about those. These allow you to quickly hit some of those most commonly used angles, including 0, 15, 22.5, 30, 45, and 60 degrees. Simply loosen up the red knob on the back, pull back on the slat, and slide it into one of those detents. Now I know some people have complained that that latch is a little bit difficult to pull back, but frankly I think a little bit resistance is needed. Now if you have a unique angle that you'd like to cut that's not represented by those detents, this gauge can handle that as well. By using the red crosshair, you can hit any angle you'd like and tighten it down with the handle by twisting it to the left. Now obviously I'm using this on a cabinet saw, but this thing works just as well on a job site saw. And in fact, with its smaller stature, I think it's a better option for these job site table saws versus the Kreg. The last thing that I want to talk about before we do a couple of test cuts with the bower is the length of the miter bar. The miter bar length of the bower in front of the fence is fairly small, coming in at 11.5 inches, versus the Kreg, which comes in at almost 16 inches long. And my main purpose for bringing this up is this can cause some stability issues when cross-cutting wider pieces of wood. So let's test this thing out and see if it's accurate enough for a woodworking shop. First up, I want to see if it's 90 degrees right out of the box in that detent. And surprisingly, I'm not seeing any material difference between the blade and the fence itself. But let's cross-cut a piece of plywood and see if that comes out at 90. And if I take my piece of plywood and place a woodpecker square right up against the edge and place a flashlight behind it, I'm not seeing any light behind that square. Now let's do a 45-degree angle on the opposite side with a detent at 45. And once again, that's right on at 45 degrees. Now I know a couple other channels that I respect have gotten some different results with the detents on their gauge. But I can only share the results that I've gotten from the one that I purchased, and I think it's good to get different perspectives. Well, I have to admit, I think this one's pretty dope, but we've got a couple more tools to take a look at. Specifically, our next tool is from Pittsburgh. You know, they sell a lot of Pittsburgh stuff over there. Yeah, the Harbor Freight near me got robbed blind. They're calling the culprits the Pittsburgh Steelers. So this is a tool that they actually had in stock, so I bought 2 of them. These are 2 Pittsburgh quick clamps with quick release. Let's check them out. So the thing that sold me with these clamps are 2 words, quick and release. If we take a quick look at the clamp, you can see it's got a pretty unique design. The first thing that catches my eye about these clamps are the 2 orange tabs on the side, and these are the quick release buttons. By simply depressing one of these orange tabs, you can easily move the jaw of the clamp forward or backwards, saving you time and effort versus manually screwing those clamps tight. Now the body and jaws are made out of aluminum, but there are a couple plastic pieces on these clamps that I'm not too fond of. The first item is the handle, which is hollow and triangular shape and not necessarily that comfortable. The second plastic piece is the push button for the quick release. These are also made out of plastic and they feel like they could crack or break off. If we look at the capacity of the clamp, you can see it's fairly large, coming in at 2 5/8 of an inch. And the height of the jaw is a little smaller, coming in at 1 inch exactly. Now let me tell you the best part about these clamps, and that is the price, as each one of these clamps is less than 12 bucks. And the most comparable corner clamps that I have to this design are my wet holes, and these are my favorite corner clamps. But there's one problem though, these SOBs cost $36.99 a pop. And although the wet holes is a great clamp, I feel like I'll have a little bit more control with that Pittsburgh given the 2 handles. And because of this clamp's functionality and the price, I can understand the hype. Well, that's 2 dope viral tools from Harbor Freight so far. Let's see what our next tool is. Now our next item is also a clamp, but not any ordinary clamp, it's a parallel clamp. You know, I got a picture of both my ex-wives standing straight and narrow right next to each other at my nephew's hog show. Yeah, I got that picture hanging right next to my clamps in my shop. That way I can have my parallel clamps right next to my parallel tramps. So these are the viral Bremen parallel clamps that you see everybody talking about on YouTube. Now if you don't have parallel clamps in your shop, I would highly recommend them. The problem is parallel clamps are expensive, especially if you're buying higher end brands like Jorgensen and Bessie. In fact, to get the same length in Jorgensen, you're going to be paying about $174 for 2, while Bessie goes for about $52 a clamp. And this 48-inch parallel clamp from Bremen is considerably cheaper, coming in at $38.99. So let me take one of these Bremen clamps out of their packaging so that we can take a look at some of their features. Now obviously I bought 2 of these because the price was so good, but unfortunately after unwrapping my first one I can already tell I have to return one. And that's simply because one of these clamps already has a bent bar. Now I probably should have realized this before I purchased it, but I'm going to go ahead and return this. But let's look past that and take a look at the other one. Now one of my first impressions with these clamps is they're pretty heavy, having a shipping weight of 8.7 pounds. If we look at the jaws of these clamps, you can see they're very similar to any other parallel clamp, having a throat depth of 3 3/4 of an inch and a throat width of about 2 inches. Now these Bremen clamps are listed as having a 48-inch capacity, but if we measure it out, you can see it's about 48.5. If we look at the handle of the clamp, you can see it's got a nice soft rubber grip that's very comparable to any other high-end clamp. Each clamp also comes with 2 removable support brackets as well as a removable end foot. And that removable end foot allows you to easily convert these parallel clamps to spreaders without any tools. And just like those high-end clamps, these clamps have a clamping force of up to 1,300 pounds. And with these clamps' resin body construction, you can be assured that wood glue won't stick to them. So are these Bremen clamps worth all the hype? Well, I'm kind of indifferent. Sure, the price is right and they have all the features you'd want on a parallel clamp, but I can't overlook the fact that one of the bars on these clamps was bent. So I don't think these clamps are a joke, but I also don't think they're quite dope. So I'm going to hang one of these clamps up and return the other and report back in a couple of months. Well, that takes us through 3 items so far today and 4 more left to take a look at. Before we move on to our 4th, I ask you to do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and leave a comment, as it really does help out this small woodworking channel. Also, if you haven't already, do me a favor and check out my website, FlynnDoggWoodwork.com. There you can find all sorts of fun woodworking accessories like all the t-shirts that I wear in my videos. Lastly, if any of the tools we're taking a look at today interest you, I'll leave links in the description below so that you can go check them out for yourself. Now let's get on to our next tool. Well, maybe it's not exactly a tool, but it is a necessary shop accessory, and that is the good old-fashioned shop towel. You know, that reminds me of my brother Cooter. He's on the run after escaping prison. He has to disguise himself now by wrapping his head with paper towels. I'm pretty sure they'll catch him though because he's got a bounty on his head. So for years, I've been using these professional white rags that are available at Home Depot. But for the last year or so, they just haven't had these in stock. And frankly, these towels have their issues, especially in my shop, as I'm constantly pulling walnuts out of the top of these towels. Now yes, I do have a squirrel problem in my barn, and I've even thought about creating a dispenser to store these towels upside down. But this next viral Harbor Freight item solves all that. These are the Toolbox blue shop towels. Now it's not necessarily the towels that interest me so much as it is the big grip dispenser. This dispenser comes with everything you need to not only hold your towels upside down, but also vertically. And that's because not only does it come with a dispenser to hold your towels, but it also comes with a mounting bracket and screws to mount the mounting bracket. Simply take the included 3 screws and attach your mounting bracket to the wall, or in my case, the post to my bench. Then you can take your dispensers and with its little notches on the handle, it slides right into that mounting bracket. And with the dispenser's resealable flip-top lid, you can access all the towels you need right underneath that canister. And each refillable roll comes with 200 sheets and is made from 60% recyclable material and is the same size and has the same durability as many of your major brands. And it's because of this canister and mounting bracket that I can totally understand why this thing is going viral. And I have no problem calling this Harbor Freight accessory dope. Now let's check out our next item. So if I were to ask you what tool goes missing in your shop the most, what would you say? Tape measure? Your favorite hammer? Or maybe it's that dust collection remote. Those are all great answers, but I think there's one wrench that most people are missing, and that's the 10mm wrench or socket. I lost my 10mm socket in my 3rd divorce. I only got a 5mm now. She took half. Since the 10mm socket size is one of the most commonly used sizes, it can oftentimes go missing. So Pittsburgh Tools took notice of this, and they developed this viral socket set, the 10mm socket set. This 10-piece 10mm set could be the perfect way to replace some of those sockets that are missing in your shop. And this set has a nice mix of sockets for your 3 most common drivers, including a 1/4-inch drive for a shallow impact, shallow, flex, and deep socket. Not only that, but it's also got those same 4 10mm sockets for a 3/8-inch driver as well. And the last 2 sockets are for a 1/2-inch drive, and they include a shallow and deep socket. And this set even includes a socket rail for convenient storage so that you don't lose those 10mm again. So if you're like me and you tend to lose these things in your shop, this could be a great replacement to get you back in business. And at a price of just under $15, I can totally understand why this product went viral. As missing sockets are no joke in my shop, and I think these things are pretty dope. Well, for our next Harbor Freight viral tool, we're going to go back to clamps. Boy, I tell you, all this talk about clamps reminds me of my mom during Easter. All of my clamps would go up missing. She would be so happy that she would clamp her hams. Well, we may not be clamping any hams with these clamps, but hopefully after taking a look at them, we'll be clapping our hands. My favorite classic clamp that I have in my shop is my 12-inch wooden screw clamp from Bessie. The problem is, even though this is a low-tech clamp, it has a high-tech price, coming in at $32 for just one clamp. And these clamps really aren't that complicated, so when I saw they were selling one at Harbor Freight for under $7, I thought I'd check it out. This is the Pittsburgh 12-inch wooden screw clamp. Let's see how it compares to that Bessie. Now let's take this new clamp and place it right on top of that Bessie to see if we can see any differences. Now I don't know about you, but these clamps appear to be identical. Now you may have noticed that round hole in the Bessie, but that's a modification that I made to convert this clamp to a caul. If we look at the Pittsburgh clamp, you can see it's got the exact same clamp capacity as the Bessie at 6 inches long. And the jaws of the clamp are able to open just as much as that Bessie at about 8 inches. And with all of the relative dimensions between the two clamps being identical, I really don't see the point in spending more money for the Bessie. And with the jaws of the Pittsburgh being made out of hardwood, just like the Bessie, you really can't go wrong with this clamp. Whether you're using the clamp to hold things down, hold things up, or even as a temporary vise. And at 20% of the cost of those Bessies, I can completely understand why these things have gone viral, as these are an absolutely dope deal. Well, it's hard to believe it, but we're finally down to our last Harbor Freight viral tool. And this one is all about a simple magnet. You know, I was a chick magnet my first 2 years in high school. Everything was great until that summer the fair came to town. I got on that Ferris wheel and I couldn't get off for the last 2 years. You see, magnets are one of those things that you really just can't mess up. And I just recently converted a high-end one into bit storage over at my drill press. And that thing wasn't cheap. It's 24 inches long and cost over 30 bucks. So when I saw a video showing that Harbor Freight sells these things for 15 to 20% of the cost, I knew I needed to give it a try. And judging how hard it was to get it off the metal rack at Harbor Freight, I think this thing's going to work. This is the 18-inch US General magnetic holder. Let's get it out of the box and see how it compares to some of those higher end ones. Now this is the most inexpensive item we've taken a look at today, coming in at $4.99. Now the reason that I got this magnet is I thought it would be a great item to hang right above my router table. I have a bad habit of storing my wrenches and other router accessories right behind the fence of my router table. So I thought, why not take this magnet, mount it right behind my router table, and get all those items off the table and onto this magnet. But I want to make sure this magnet is strong enough before I mount it onto my wall. So let's take this magnet and load it up with wrenches, accessories, and even a few bits. Now with everything loaded up, the question is this magnet strong enough to be mounted to my wall? And after giving it a few swift shakes for a while, I'm happy to say this thing can get mounted to my wall. Well, I totally get the hype on this one. At just $5, you really can't beat this shop organization tool. Heck, this thing's so dope I can even put a 10mm wrench on it. Well, I hope you had fun with me today checking out these 7 viral Harbor Freight tools. I'll have to say I'm quite pleased with the results of almost every single tool we've taken a look at today. If you know of any other great Harbor Freight tools, leave a comment below and let us all know. I'd love to take a look at them. So whenever I walk into Harbor Freight, I always have sticker shock, but in a good way. There are so many cheap and affordable tools available that I think these deals must be too good to be true. So I thought I'd pick up a few of these tools and see if there's any potential steals available at Harbor Freight. And for today's list, I ended up picking up 10 of these items. Oh, I love top 10 lists. I'll join you. How about 10 reasons why it's good to be a man in 2025? I'll get you started. You can wear a white t-shirt to a water park and nobody gives you a second glance. So let's get this show on the road and show you the first item I picked up from Harbor Freight. Our first item of the day is the Gordon 4-sided diamond honing block. Let's give it a look. So I don't know if you've looked at the price of diamond stones, but they can be quite expensive. As I spent well over $120 for these 3 diamond stones as well as this strop. But this Gordon version came in at $12.49, so I thought I'd give it a try. If we look at the honing block, you'll see it's got kind of a unique design. First off, you'll notice that it's got a plastic housing with finger notches so that you can remove the stones, as well as 2 rubber feet on the bottom. And it's these rubber feet that prevent the housing from slipping on you as you go to sharpen your blades. If we look at the stones themselves, you'll see that they're color coded, with blue at 200 grit, yellow at 3, green at 400, and red at 600. And each grit is clearly labeled on the end of the block so that you know which grit is facing up. Now I'll be honest, when I first purchased this, my intent was to sharpen plain blades and chisels. And you probably could do this, but I would be hesitant to do it on some of your nicer chisels, as I'm not quite sure how the dimples on these stones will affect the straightness of those blades. But for what I like to call banger chisels, or the chisels that you don't use for precision woodworking or cheap planes, this may be a great solution. And this sharpening solution could absolutely be used for any knife that you used in your kitchen or your shop. And with its 3 layers of diamonds that are nickel bonded to the steel frame, this thing's going to last for a while. Just add a little bit of Windex and you're good to go. And with that, we're ready to check out our second item. Wedding dress, $2,000. Tuxedo rental, $75. Our next item of the day is the Windsor Design 3-piece mini brass plane set. Let's check it out. Let me know in the comments if you've heard of Windsor Design, as this appears to be the high-end woodworking tools from Harbor Freight. In fact, I almost picked up this standard hand plane while I was there. So this is one of the more expensive items I purchased this go-around, coming in at $14.99 for this 3-piece set. So if we look at the design of these 3 planes, you can see it has a pretty decent construction, with the body made entirely out of brass and hardwood. And each one of these planes feels fairly well built, with a 3-inch long body as well as a hardwood sole. And there's obviously 3 different styles here, and what sold me on the set was the block plane. It's even smaller than my smallest block plane, which is my Jorgensen. But there's also 2 other planes that come with this set, including a 3-inch long bullnose plane as well as a scraper. And the carbon steel blades on each one of these planes are fully adjustable and are supposed to perform as well as any other plane blade. And although these planes will probably need a little bit of work on the blades, I'm pretty pleased with the results right out of the box. So if you do a lot of arts and crafts or just need to soften the edges on your projects, these may be the perfect tool for you. Now let's move on to our next item. If another guy shows up to a party wearing the same outfit, you might just become best buds. Next up, we have a couple of Rafter squares, and for this one, we have a twofer. Now both of these Rafter squares are essentially 12-inch speed squares, and I couldn't decide between the plastic one or the metal one. So of course, I purchased both. Let's first take a look at the plastic one. So the plastic one is obviously the cheapest, made by Pittsburgh, and comes in at $7.99. If we compare the design to Old Faithful, the Swanson, you can see they're almost identical. The plastic one has all the measurements molded into the design, so you know it's never going to wear out, and it also has notches for scribe holes at every 1/4 inch. Not only that, but by using the scale on the top, you can calculate any angle you want by using the pivot point. But for me, the only reason I haven't purchased this square in the past is because it's made out of plastic, as I've always been concerned that this thing just won't be squared, so let's test it out right now. With a simple strike of the line, flipping it over and striking a secondary line, let's see if those lines are parallel. And I am just as surprised as you, as those lines are parallel running down the entire length of that line. But that's not the only Rafter square I got. Let's take a look at the aluminum. Now the aluminum is a little bit more expensive, coming in at $16.99. And as you can see, this 12-inch Rafter square is made by a company called Doyle, and it's very easy to read with its black background and white writing. And the square is made out of anodized aluminum and has laser-etched marking for long-term durability. And just like with the plastic one, it's got 1/4-inch scribe holes running down the length of the square, as well as a pivot point and angles on the side. Not only that, but it's also got a couple of cheat sheets right on the frame of the tool, with a conversion chart from inches to feet and decimals, as well as a common Rafter conversion. But I've got to test this thing for squares, so let's do that right now. So once again, we'll strike a line, flip our square over, and strike a secondary line. And once again, we have 2 perfectly parallel lines running down the length of that square. So a win-win for both of these squares, and I'm pretty pleased about this one as I've been eyeballing these for quite some time. Let's move on to our next tool. Underwear is 10 bucks for a 3-pack. Next up, we have the Pittsburgh multi-purpose angle finder. Let's give it a look. So this is an interesting, unique little gadget that I've seen quite a few times, and when I saw the price of it, I just couldn't pass it up, as this thing only goes for $4.99. And this tool, once again, is made by Pittsburgh, which is a brand that I really haven't had any problems with. So this is a tool that's meant to be used in the same fashion that you would use a T-bevel. But there's one main difference between this tool and a T-bevel. You're going to immediately know the angle you're at with this tool. If we look at the tool, you'll see it's got a plastic construction with a yellow background and easy-to-read black writing. This tool is designed to either be placed on the inside or outside of any angle. Once you have your angle in place, you can twist the bronze knob on top to lock it into place. Then, depending on what type of angle you're recording, you'll use one of the 4 scales on the frame of the tool. And in my case, I'm at 135 degrees, which is the 90 degrees plus the 45. And I'll have to admit, it's a little bit hard to read, but you can see I'm right between 140 and 130. Or I can simply just add the 45 to the 90 degree marking. But more importantly than that, with this angle locked into place, I can easily transfer this angle over to my miter saw, making this a nice little gadget at a cheap price to potentially have in your toolkit. Now let's move on to our next tool. You'll never catch a razor below the neck. Next up, we have the Pittsburgh corner and vise clamp. Let's give it a look. So a few weeks ago, I covered another corner clamp in this video right here, so if you haven't seen that one, go check it out after this video. But this clamp has some features that other one just doesn't have, and you can't beat the price of just $8.99. So if we look closely at this clamp, you'll see it's got a very unique design, and that's because it serves 2 purposes. Let's take a look at its first feature, which is a corner clamp. By placing 2 pieces of stock into position, this will firmly hold any corner together. Not only that, but with the cutouts on the opposite side, it can even accommodate butt joints. And the clamp is even flexible so that it can accommodate different thicknesses of material. And you can really cinch these joints down, as it's got a feature I haven't seen on any other clamp. Simply pull out on the rubber grip handle to disengage it from the clamp. Then you have all sorts of extra leverage by having it disengaged. And it's this extra leverage and clamping force that's really going to hold these joints together. And with that clamping jaw completely extended, it can accommodate stock up to 3.3 inches thick. But as we said earlier, this tool has 2 features. Let's take a look at the second one. If we flip the clamp over, you'll see it reveals a flat surface. It's this flat surface that can act as a benchtop vise. Simply slide your workpiece into the flat surface, and with a couple of clamps, this thing can instantly be transformed into a vise. Perfect for smaller, detailed work on your workbench. And that vise can also accommodate round stock. With the small V-grooves on the face of the vise, you can easily hold your round stock securely into place, making this a pretty cool little contraption. But let's check out our next item. Before we do that though, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, and share this video. Also, check out my website, Flynndogwoodwork.com. There you can find fun woodworking accessories like all the t-shirts that I wear in my videos. Lastly, if you'd like to support the channel, check out my channel memberships in the description below. There you get early access to all my videos, as well as 1 member video a week. You don't give a rat's ass if nobody notices your haircut. Next up, we have the Pittsburgh 6-piece technical measuring kit. Let's check it out. Well, Pittsburgh's getting a lot of playing time today, and there's a reason for that. They're making quality tools at an affordable price, and this set only costs $9.99. If we look at the box, you can see there's a lot going on here, so let's get it out of the box and see what we're dealing with. First off, we have a nice little stainless steel ruler with a pocket clip. This 6-inch imperial ruler is really quite precise, having 32nd of an inch on one side and 64th on the other. If we flip that ruler around, you're going to see a pretty intense conversion chart, having an inch to decimal conversion at every 64th of an inch. The second tool is a depth gauge. Let's take a closer look at it. This dual-sided ruler has metric on one side and imperial on the other, with a 2 3/8 inch base. If we flip that base around, you can see it's got some angles on it. If we push in on the spring-loaded tab in the front, we can dial into any one of those angles, creating a unique secondary feature that I haven't seen on any other depth gauge. We also have an old-fashioned analog caliper, with an exterior and interior jaw on either side, as well as a micro adjust knob and a locking knob. You can get your exact measurement. But you're not going to be exactly precise with an analog caliper like this. Now it does have imperial and metric markings, but the imperial only goes down to 1/16 of an inch. And just like many other calipers, it does have a protrusion on the end to use as a depth stop. And the other 3 items are all spring-loaded calipers as well as dividers. And these are all things that I personally got so that I can dust off my lathe. It's the coil on the top of these divider and calipers that provides the tension as you twist the knob on the side. And I probably would have paid $9.99 for just these 2 pieces alone, and I think that's what makes this item a great deal. Now let's move on to our next. You can quietly watch a ball game without ever speaking a word to your buddy and not think that he's mad at you. Our next item is the Warrior Hinge drill bit set. Let's check it out. So this is one of those items that once you get, you'll never go back to the old way you used to do it. If you've ever tried to pre-drill your holes for your hinges, you know it can be very difficult to get those holes perfectly centered, which can lead to all sorts of issues down the road, and that's exactly why I got this set. This 3-piece set comes with 3 different sizes, 7/64, 9/64, and 11/64. One of the first things that I noticed about this set is they have a little bit of heft, and that's because they're made out of high-speed steel and they have a brass body and a steel shank. And as to be expected, these spring-loaded self-centering bits are extremely easy to use. Once one of these bits is loaded into your drill, it's the tapered end of the bit that slides right into the hole of the hinge. This automatically centers the bit, creating perfect holes in every single hole of the hinge, creating a perfect pilot hole and spacing for each one of your screws. And at under $10 for this 3-piece set, you should be able to tackle any hinge you regularly install. And be a little bit leery of what you get on Amazon, as a lot of times the bits I've got from Amazon have plastic parts, which these Warrior bits definitely don't have. But we've got more items to take a look at. Let's move on to our next. Chocolate is just another snack. So for our last 3 items, I purchased some consumables, and from what I found, these are typically lower risk items to buy. First up, we have some joinery items, some hardwood biscuits, as well as some dowels. Now these are once again made by Warrior, and the biscuits cost $6.99 for a 100-piece set, and the dowels cost $4.99 for a 36-piece set. Let's first check out the biscuits. This resealable pack of straight-grained hardwood biscuits expand when they come in contact with wood glue. And it's biscuit joinery that makes alignment a breeze when doing some of your panel glue-ups. Next up, we have the assorted dowels. This package comes with 3 different sizes of fluted dowels. The fluted shape allows glue to get into your joints, making for a more secure bond. And there's 2 different combinations of assorted dowels available at Harbor Freight. And in my case, I went with the 1/4 inch, 5/16 as well as 3/8 inch dowel. And honestly, one of the main reasons I purchased both of these items is because I just don't find them that often at the big box stores. But let's dive into the next consumable I got. You can go to the bathroom without a support group. These are Pittsburgh marking crayons. Let's check them out. There's not a whole lot to talk about with these items other than the fact that they're crayons. Now there's 2 colors available at Harbor Freight, both red and yellow, and the reason that I got these is I thought they might be perfect for marking up darker wood when I'm going to mill it. And the nice thing about these is they're pretty thick, so they're not going to break on you, and they're over 4 inches long. And whether you use the red or the yellow, you're easily going to be able to see all of your rough measurements, making these a heck of a lot easier to read than your standard pencil. And you're obviously not going to be spending an arm and a leg on these crayons, as they're just a little over $3 for the pack of 6. And finally, we've got one last consumable to check out. 3 pairs of shoes is more than enough. Our last item of the day is glue, Gorilla Glue to be exact. Now I'm usually a tight bond man, but at my Harbor Freight it was nowhere to be found. But what they did have was a lot of Gorilla Glue, so I picked up 2 bottles. Each one of these bottles was $8.99, which is $1 cheaper than the tight bond at the big box store. And I've worked with the wood glue plenty of times before, so I know it's a quality product. And the regular Gorilla Glue is something that I intend on using on outdoor projects, as it's 100% waterproof. Well, that covers all 10 items I purchased on my latest Harbor Freight trip. But I do have a bonus item for you I'd be remiss if I didn't share, and that is batteries, as the prices on batteries at Harbor Freight is about 50% of the cost that you see at the big box stores. If there's one thing I've learned about Harbor Freight, it's that you can't just buy anything on their shelf. you have to do a little bit of digging and sometimes a lot of digging. So I moseyed on over to Harbor Freight and went Harbor Freight deep by going down every single aisle in that store. And surprisingly, I walked away from there with some pretty cool stuff, and I ended up picking up a total of 5 items. And I think all of these items might benefit you in your shop. So let's dive right in and take a look at our first item. Our first item of the day is the Pittsburgh multi-square. Let's give it a quick look. Speaking of squares, women are a lot like square roots. If they're under 25, you do them in your head. So I'm a sucker for a multi-tool, but in this case, we're dealing with a multi-square. So what the heck is a multi-square? As you can probably tell, this thing doesn't look like any other square you've seen. And that's exactly why I got this tool. So let's take it out of the package and take a closer look. The first thing that we should talk about with this tool is that it's very affordable, coming in at today's pricing of just $7.99. But what do you get for this price? Well, actually quite a lot. One of the first things that you'll notice is this thing's got 3 levels right on the frame of the tool. And all of these are green bubble levels, giving you a quick reference for not only horizontal, but also 90 and 45. Right beyond those levels, you're going to find a wing nut, which allows you to instantly transform this tool into a T-bevel. And in this capacity, it has a wide range of motion, going from 0 all the way up to 270 degrees. And just like with any other T-bevel, once you have your angle in place, you can lock it down with the same wing nut. But there's even another feature that goes along with the T-bevel feature. If we look at the base of the tool, you're going to notice a little window right beside that wing nut. This is a small angle gauge giving you your degree measurement, going from 0 all the way up to 165 degrees, which is a pretty nice little quick reference to have when you're taking your measurements. And once you take this gauge and set it to 90, you can instantly use this multi-square as a square. And although I'd probably use a stationary square for that purpose, it's still a nice feature to have. Now, although the base is plastic, the blade is actually stainless steel. And this is a one-sided blade that's 7 inches long or 18 centimeters. And the last feature of this unique square is right on the tip of the tool. If we look at the very end of the tool, you're going to find a bronze knob. If we pull this out, you can see there's a little scribing tool. It's this little guy that can allow you to quickly and easily scribe out a line when your pencil is not available. And it's all these features in a nice collapsible design that's less than $8 is why I think this is a great pickup from Harbor Freight. Well, if you're in the market for a cheap T-bevel with just a few added features, I think that's a great option, but we've got a heck of a lot more tools to check out from Harbor Freight. So let's dive into our next one, which I'm pretty excited about. Next up, we have the Braun Underhood Rechargeable Work Light. Let's give it a quick look. Speaking of lights, what's the difference between a pregnant woman and a light bulb? Well, you can unscrew a light bulb. So this interesting little light is the most expensive thing we'll be taking a look at today, coming in at today's pricing of $29.99. But if it has all the features that it claims, I think this could be a valuable addition to my shop. So if we take this thing out of the box, one of the first things that you'll notice is this thing looks a heck of a lot like a lightsaber. And frankly, if it doesn't work out, that's exactly what you could use this thing for. But let's hope we get more use out of it than that. Let's take a look at what comes inside the box. Since this is a rechargeable light, you're going to get 2 charging cords. Not only do you get a standard plug-in cord, but you're also going to get a cord that can plug into your cigarette lighter. And I think you get that cigarette lighter cord as this product is primarily marketed towards the automotive industry. Now let's take a look at the light itself. One of the first things you'll notice is this is a long light, coming in at 24 inches long. And if you haven't noticed already, this is an LED light with 2 brightness settings, a low and a high. And you may have noticed that I turned this light on with one of the handles, but there's actually 2 of them. And both of these handles are almost completely identical, except for one main feature, as one of these handles has a sealable jack that you can plug your charger into. Let's take a quick tour of the other features of each handle. Both handles have a power button that not only allow you to turn the light on, but also toggle through the light settings. Now, even though the light itself is round, the handles have a hexagonal shape, which prevents it from rolling. And since this light has 845 lumens, it has a wide area of illumination. So how do you mount this thing? Well, there's a couple of different ways. Let's take a look at those. This leads us back to the handles. If we look at the very end of the handle, you'll see there's a hook, and this hook rotates in 360 degrees. This means it can easily be hooked up to many surfaces with very little effort. But that's not the only way you can secure this light. Right next to that hook, on the end of both of the handles, you're going to notice a couple of metal tabs. These are actually magnets. These magnets on both sides are powerful enough to hold the entire light up just by the 2 magnets. And with that type of flexibility, you can really have light with you wherever you need it. But let me show you the main reason why I got this light. It has everything to do with sanding. Having a light like this allows you to inspect large surface areas that you're sanding. By placing the light in a dark room right next to your workpiece, you can look for imperfections that you need to sand, allowing you to create a surface with fewer imperfections and is that much smoother. And if you're someone like me that loves creating tables and desks, this is a no-brainer add in my book. Well, I'm pretty stoked about the first two items we've taken a look at, but we've got more items to check out. Let's move on to our next. Next up, we have the 50-inch Pittsburgh Clamp and Cut Edge Guide. Let's give it a look. 50 inches, huh? That reminds me of a little research that I did on last vacation. Did you know a peach pie in Jamaica costs 50 bucks? Yeah, a cherry pie in Antigua costs 55. And lastly, a key lime pie in the Dominican costs $68. Yeah, those are the pie rates of the Caribbean. So this is an item I was really quite excited to see when I saw it on the shelves at Harbor Freight. Now I chose to go with the 50-inch version, which goes for about $17.99, but they also make a 24-inch version which goes for just over 10 bucks. But in my opinion, you're going to want to spring for the larger one, as this will allow you to cross-cut through 4x8 sheets of plywood. So let's take a dive into how this thing works. To understand that, we need to turn the tool over. This saw guide has two clamping jaws that are meant to be attached to sheet goods. Both jaws have a perforated rubber tab, but they're just a little bit different. Let's take a look at the first one. This first jaw is mobile. By simply depressing the metal tab on the back, you can move it back and forth until it rests up right against your plywood. But that's only done after you place your first jaw. Let's take a look at the other jaw. The other jaw once again has a pad and is non-mobile and has a lever on the very back. To place the saw guide, the two jaws need to be working in combination with each other. Let's do a real-life example and take a look at how this thing works. Let's say we want to make a cut along this red line. We first want to know the distance between the edge of our circular saw plate and the blade itself. In this case, about 3¼ inches. So we'll mark off 3¼ inches from our cut line to give us reference for that saw guide. With those markings now made, I now want to take the non-adjustable side with the handle and place it right up against the edge of the plywood. With that side in place, we can now take the other side of the saw guide, line it up to our other markings, and move the adjustable clamp to the edge of the plywood, making sure that it's firmly touching that plywood. And with all those alignments made, we can push the lever down on the other side to lock it into place. And with everything in place, we can grab our circular saw and cut right down that line. And with that cut made, you can see how accurate we were cutting right down that line. But another unique feature of this guide has to do with cutting angles. If we look at one of the clamping jaws, you can see that it can swivel left to right at 45 degrees. This means you can even cut moderate angles with this guide, giving it that much more flexibility. So if you're one of those people that's not quite ready to invest in a track saw and you're getting tired of using the old 2x4 and clamp trick, this may be a great option for you. And at under $18, I don't think you can afford to overlook the value of this incredible tool. Well, we're getting through them today, and I'm pretty impressed with all of these viral tools from Harbor Freight that are less than $30. But we've got two more products to take a look at, so let's move on to our next. Before we do that, however, I ask you to do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, and share this video, as it really does help out this woodworking channel. Also, if you haven't already, check out my website, Flynndogwoodwork.com. There you can find all sorts of fun woodworking accessories like all the t-shirts that I wear in my videos. And just like with all my videos, if any of the tools we take a look at interest you, I'll leave links in the description below so that you can go check them out for yourself. And finally, if you'd like to support the channel further, check out my channel memberships, where you can get early access to all my videos as well as one member video a week. Now let's get back to that fourth tool. Next up, we have two sets of US General drawer liners. Let's give them a look. All this talk about drawers reminds me. I think for my birthday, my wife's getting me a build-it-yourself scale model of a horse. Yeah, I found a piece of it in her bedside drawer. So why the heck would you need drawer liners in a shop? Well, the same reason that some people use yoga mats. You see, when I was finishing up a project last week, I realized that I've got no grip in my shop. Whether you need it for sanding or routing, sometimes your wood surfaces can get away from you. In fact, if we look at this footage here, you can see how much this tabletop is moving all over my tabletop surface. So I knew I had to put a stop to it, and that's exactly why I got these liners. So obviously I got two types of liners here. I first got the mesh, which is $5.99 for a roll, and then I got the solid, which is $7.99 for a roll. And both of these liners are 18 inches wide by 72 inches long. And the reason I got two of them is for two different purposes. Let's first take a look at the mesh one. One of the first things that you'll notice is once it's on top of your tabletop, it's not going anywhere. Not only that, but if I place a board on top of this mesh liner, it's not going anywhere either. which in my opinion is ideal for sanding, giving your workpiece a firm place to stay while you go to do your finish sanding. But why would I pick the mesh liner for sanding over the solid liner? Well, let's take a look at the board. If we look at the side and the end of the board, you can see that all that sawdust is able to fall through the mesh grate. This allows your board to maintain its grip to your table while all the sawdust falls through the holes. And if we lift up that board and remove the mat, you can see that sawdust pattern on the top of the table. And it's because of this that you can maintain a grip through your entire sanding process. But let's take a look at that solid liner. For the solid liner, we once again have a firm grip on the tabletop surface. But just like before, we can also get a solid grip on our workpiece itself. Now you could indeed sand on this solid liner, but what I envision it for is using my router. It's this liner that's going to be able to give you just enough grip to do some of your final touches to your workpieces, like putting a chamfer on the edge. Not only will this give you a little bit more control with your router, but it's also going to make routing some of your smaller pieces a heck of a lot safer. And it's this fact alone that I think it's definitely worth it to pick up some of these cheap but very useful drawer liners. Well, we're getting right through them, and we're finally down to our last viral Harbor Freight tool for under $30. Let's give it a look. Our last item of the day is the US General Mini Toolbox. Let's give it a look. What's a toolbox and a deadbeat dad have in common? Screws, nuts, and bolts. So if you remember, a few weeks back, I picked up this Cobalt mini toolbox from Lowe's for about 20 bucks. And I probably got about 10 comments saying you need to check out the US General one from Harbor Freight. So that's exactly what I did. So let's take a look at how this US General mini toolbox compares. So right off the bat, I'm seeing almost zero differences between these two toolboxes, other than the price, with the Cobalt being $19.99 while the US General is $1 cheaper. But as I dig a little bit deeper, there are a couple of two significant differences. If you remember from my Lowe's video where I took a look at the Cobalt, you'll remember that one of my biggest complaints was that the Cobalt didn't have any liners. In fact, in that video, I even went as far as to make my own liner for the top shelf of the Cobalt. And even though we just took a look at some liners, I don't think I'm going to need them for this US General mini toolbox. Not only does that top shelf have a liner, but if we open up each one of the bottom drawers, you'll see that they have liners as well. The next key difference between these two mini toolboxes has to do with the magnetic locking system on the drawers. Now, although they both have magnetic drawer locks, there's a significant difference between the two toolboxes. The Cobalt has a much weaker magnet system. In fact, if I hold it upside down, you'll see that both drawers can fall out. But the US General has a much more secure hold. In fact, when I try to hold it upside down, you can see that those drawers stay in place. And finally, I only see one other difference between the two toolboxes, and it has everything to do with the lid. First off, the US General has a couple of rubber pads right on the top of the lid to give it a softer close. And secondly, unlike the Cobalt, which has a hinge that can open up over 180 degrees, the US General has a hinge that opens up less than 90 degrees. And I really like the way that US General has a limit at 90 degrees so that it doesn't open too far. And other than that, everything else with this toolbox appears to be identical, including the manufacturing materials as well as the dimensions. And for a buck less, I think it's an easy decision to go for the US General over the Cobalt. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on this compilation video. As you just saw, we all probably need to give Harbor Freight a second glance. Do me a favor today, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, and share this video, as it really does help. And let me know in the comments below what items I might have missed. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining me today on this compilation video. Take care and have a great week. You know, I got a Harbor Freight ad in the mail yesterday. Right on the top it said giant liquidation sale. I'm hoping to get a green one before they're sold out. How about this one? What do you call two harbors? It's a paradox. That was good. All right, last try. Did you hear about the shipment of Viagra that was stolen from New York Harbor? Yeah, the cops are telling you to keep a lookout for hardened criminals. All right, let's get it, folks. You know, I'm sorry and I apologize generally have the same meaning, except at a funeral. How about this one? You know, generally I don't make fun of short people. They have a hard enough time putting food on the table. Yeah. All right, last try. Did you hear that a lot of Hitler's generals disappeared after the war and became animal doctors? Yeah, they were veterinarians. absolutely.